I am so glad that you clicked on this video. You're about to learn more about my 4-day content creation system. And before you run away, I want to encourage you to watch this and think about creating your content with this system. What it does is it helps you to spread out the process over 4 days. So you work on the content a little bit, you walk away from it, you go back to it, you walk away. And you do that several times, and doing it that way gives you the opportunity to see the content with fresh eyes. That means your content will be better, it'll be more polished, and you'll really have a chance to think about it. Plus, you'll never have to work on your content in one long marathon sprint. This is a concept that I first introduced in my book, Master Content Marketing. I reviewed it in my book, Master Content Strategy, and this video will show you exactly how it works. Give it a chance. I'm going to go over to my slides. Come on and follow me, and let's talk about the 4-day content creation system. When I have shared this in the past, people have found it very helpful. They found that it helps to relieve some of that feeling of overwhelm that they feel around creating content. So I came up with this system because I was busy and I knew I wanted to create content, and I had to figure out a way to do it and be able to juggle all the other things going on in my life. And what I had noticed throughout my career, because for a lot of my career, I was working as a graphic designer, so I was doing creative work all the time. And what I noticed when I was doing that creative work is that my very best work happened when I would work on something and then I would take a break and walk away from it. And then I would revisit it later and I would edit it and I would notice some things that needed changing. So I'd make those changes. Then I would work on it some more and I would walk away. And I would do this several times. And I found that when I gave a project enough time, that I could visit it, work on it, walk away from it, and revisit it, my work was so much better. And it was a way for me to almost like ignite this inner editor who was able to see the things that the piece of work needed because I had walked away and taken a break. So as I approached this idea of creating content, which for me was something brand new at that time, I had never done it before and I was not confident at all as a content creator, I started creating my content over 4 days. I wrote a post about this on Copyblogger. It was very popular, and then I started talking about it all the time and shared it in my first book, Master Content Marketing. So I want to share it briefly here with you so that you can take advantage of this and use it as well. So the way you use this 4-day content creation system is you think about the day that you want to publish. So let's say that you want to publish on Thursdays and you commit to it. You're like, Thursday is my publication day. I'm going to publish on Thursdays. So what you do is you work backward from Thursday and you say day 1 happens on Monday. Day 2 happens on Tuesday. Day 3 happens on Wednesday, and day 4 happens on Thursday. The beautiful thing about doing it this way is that if it's Monday, you know what you need to be doing. If it's Tuesday, you know what you're going to be doing. Wednesday and Thursday, those days of the week, you have predetermined tasks that you're going to tackle, and you can kind of adjust your calendar accordingly. So let's talk about what those tasks are. So the first day, on day 1, I recommend that you use this day to just map out the basics of your piece of content. And this could be written content, but it could also be a podcast or a vlog, like a video that you're putting together. No matter what the final format is, you likely will need some kind of underlying structure for the piece. You're going to need to know what you'll call it, and you'll need to know how you're going to present the content, right? So that's what you're working on day 1. You're mapping out the basics. It's what I call the backbone of your piece of content. So what are the basics? Well, the basics are to figure out what your headline will be and to figure out what your subheads will say. Or in the case of, let's say, a podcast, your subheads may be the sections of your podcast. So it's how will you divide up this piece of content and present the information in a way that it's chunked down and logical and it makes sense, right? So headlines and subheads, that's all you need to do on the first day. The headline, we all know, is super important. The headline serves as almost like a mini advertisement for your piece of content. So it's worth spending a lot of time to come up with a headline that will make people want to click. Because these days, that is step one. The click is step one. Subheads are very important because some people only skim content. And if they skim the content, what they'll see is the headlines and the subhead. And that's how they figure out what's going on in the piece of content. So you have a variety of tools that you can choose from to use on this first day. In my newest book, I talk about app appreciators and tangible planners. So in my mind, an app appreciator is somebody who likes to work with digital tools. You like to have things on a laptop that you can then see on your phone, and you like to be able to update them wherever you are. If you're an app appreciator, you could use something like online mind mapping tools so that you can capture your ideas in a format where they can be moved around and reorganized however they work for you. I personally love mind mapping tools. I used to not understand them, and now I love them. So you have to find what works for you. If you're a tangible planner, something like index cards or post-it notes might work really great. That allows you to put something on paper and then move it around. But the idea here is you want something that's going to allow you to capture a headline, capture some subheads. You can also use this tool that I've developed for you that I'll be presenting in just a moment. So I told you I love mind maps. This is a mind map for a post that I wrote for Copyblogger. On the left-hand side, you see the headline that I ended up going with. And then what you see in the bolded items basically that was me working out the subheads. At the very bottom, the very last bolded item, it says, join me and Jeff Goins for Zero to Book. That was a call to action, and we'll talk about all of that in just a moment. But this was a place where I kind of captured my overall structure for the post. And this is that post when it was published on Copyblogger. That's what it ended up looking like. So the idea here is that you just build a structure. You really just want to have your headlines and subhead. And then at that point, you walk away from your piece of content. And what is amazing about this is that during those periods that you've walked away from your content and you've taken a break from it, you're still thinking about it. That's the amazing thing, is that your brain will still be thinking about your piece of content. That's what's so great about this system. Day 2. So you've created your headline and your subheads and you've walked away and taken a break. So on day two is when you're going to be doing the most writing. So if you're a coffee drinker or a tea drinker, this would be a really good day to build in an extra cup of caffeine, because this is the day when you want to just churn out a lot of words. You want to really get the bulk of your content written, only in first draft form. It does not have to be polished. It does not have to be finished, but you want to get a first draft done. So what does that first draft need to contain? Well, you need to have an introductory sentence, actually, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But then you have to write that first paragraph and that introduction to your piece where you're really trying to draw people in and get them engaged in your content and consuming it. Then you've already written your subheads, but obviously you need to fill in what you're going to say under each subhead. So you'll write that as well. And then at the end, you're going to wrap it up with a summary, which I'll talk about in just a moment, and you'll include a call to action. And the reason you include a call to action is that we are not creating content. We are creating content marketing. And the reason we call it content marketing is that it's supposed to be, when it does its job, it's supposed to be building your business. And the only way that it can build your business is if you ask that person who has just consumed your piece of content to take some kind of action. That action doesn't necessarily need to be buying a product. Maybe that's not even the best way to approach it. You don't necessarily want to say, now that you've read my content, buy this thing. But you might ask them to opt into something so that they can join an email list. You might ask them to opt into an interest list about a product that you're going to offer them down the line. You might ask them to leave a comment. You might ask them to share the article on social media or share your podcast or your video on social media. But you should ask people to do something. Get into the habit of always asking them to do something, even if it's a minimal action. Tips for day 2. I want you to just focus on getting your first draft written as quickly as you can. So one of the things that I say to people when I'm teaching this is you have to imagine that you are diving in one end of a pool that has really cold water in it, right? You just want to get over to the other side as quickly as possible and get out so you can warm up. And that's what we want to do with this piece of content. You want to dive in. Don't worry if it's not pretty. Just get it done and get out of there as quickly as possible. What you're going to be doing is letting it sit after this. Your brain is going to continue to work on it. You'll develop what I call fresh eyes. So when you come back to it the next day, and there is a full day devoted to editing and polishing, that day, because you've taken a break from it, you'll see things that you wouldn't have seen if you tried to edit it on the same day you actually wrote it. So writing it on one day, even just in messy first draft form, is super important. And then having a completely separate day when hopefully you've gotten some sleep and you've walked away and you've gotten a break from it, and then you come back and edit, that's the way to go. So let's look at that day. Day 3 is when you're going to be putting the final polish on your piece of content. So you'll be editing it, you'll tweak it, you'll finalize everything. You have a full day devoted to this. So if you are working with an editor, awesome. You are a lucky person, but most of the people I teach have to edit their own work. So I have a couple of tips for doing that. One thing that you can do is read it out loud. I always tell people, like, read it out loud in your best robot voice. So you want to read your content like this in a monotone. The reason you do that is because sometimes if you use a lot of inflection and a lot of enthusiasm, you skip over words and you don't even realize you've skipped over them. When you read them in kind of a monotone, the errors tend to pop out. And reading them out loud is super helpful. So I definitely recommend that. People will think you're talking to yourself, and that's okay. The other thing that the editor at Copyblogger used to teach was to proof backwards. So read the last sentence and kind of read backwards up your piece of content. I've never been very good at that, but she swore by that if you read the sentences kind of out of order like that, you could really see the sentences. So that's something to think about as well. Once you have it all proofed and edited, I recommend that you spend some time formatting it for readability. And that includes making sure you use relatively short paragraphs. So don't go over 3 to 5 sentences for any given paragraph. Screen reading tends to be more comfortable when the paragraphs are shorter. Don't be afraid to have an occasional 1-sentence paragraph. If you want to emphasize something, just leave a sentence there hanging out all by itself. Add bulleted lists as much as you can. Block quotes. Make sure you've got those subheads sprinkled throughout. So all of these things will make your content more readable. I also recommend that on day 3 that you add an image where possible. So you want to make sure you have some kind of visual component in your content. Images are amazing because they communicate so fast. They actually hit an area of our brains that is not as busy. So we have a part of our brains that processes verbal things like language and the written word. That part of our brain is busy all day long because we are processing verbal communication all day long, whether it's written or oral. The image part of our brain is in a different part. It moves very fast and it's kind of sitting there. It's not as busy, right? So when you communicate with an image, you're really using more of your viewer's brain. So I highly recommend adding an image to your post and then using that image on social media. So we've gotten through our first three days. Let's look and see what happens on the final day. This is your publication day. So publication normally is kind of an automatic process. If you're using some kind of content management system, you simply set the date and time you want it to publish and it will go live even if you're fast asleep. But promotion is something you do have to put some effort into. And I recommend that you give it a really good push on the first day so that you create kind of a splash with your content. You want to promote it across all the social media channels that you use and then respond to comments that either comment on the piece of content or comments that you see on social media. It's a little bit like a movie premiere where you're trying to really make a splash with your piece of content by talking about it a lot on the first couple of days after it's published. One thing that I recommend you do if you write, here's the thing, not every piece of content you create is epic, but every so often you put together something, maybe it has a lot of research in it, or it's got lots of visual examples, or it's got, maybe you added a video to it. It's like a really amazing piece of content. When you write something that we could call an epic post or an epic podcast or an epic video, something that really goes above and beyond and that you know can help a lot of people, don't be afraid to reach out to colleagues who also have audiences who might be interested in your piece of content. Get out there and advocate for this thing that you created. Ask them to share it in an email or on social media. However they normally communicate with their audiences, let them know that you've created this piece of content and you would love for them to help you share it. You won't do this for every post, but when you write something or create something really, really great, don't be afraid to advocate for it. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Pamela Wilson, author of Master Content Marketing and Master Content Strategy. I want to let you know that the idea is not that you spend 4 days on your content. It's that you revisit your content and spend a little bit of time over 4 days, making sure it's really polished and it is really speaking to your audience. Give it a chance.